Hello everybody, and welcome to my usual Friday spreadsheet entitled The Most Undervalued Growth Stocks. And this is a spreadsheet where I analyze growth stocks in my coverage universe and I ask the question, are they undervalued? Note, this is not the best growth stock to buy type of spreadsheet. This is undervalued. The most undervalued stock right now is not always the most total return potential stock, and I think that's an important distinction to make. Really briefly, if you've already if you've not seen the spreadsheet or if you're new to the channel, I only focus on growth stocks, and my stocks are only optimized for gross profit. They are not optimized for anything else in my view, and that's why I heavily focused on three metrics: variation of the enterprise value over gross profit metric, the pure one, the forward one, and the enterprise value over trailing 12-month gross profit over revenue growth, which is my spin on the PEG ratio and Peter Lynch's PEG ratio, except I don't use earnings growth, I use revenue growth, and I don't use earnings, I use profit. And this allows me to answer the question, how much am I paying for each percentage point of growth that is coming within the next 12 months? So that's the question that I try to answer by this metric. And of course, the lower the number, the better. And anything under 0.5 is typically something that I consider good. And this is related to Peter Lynch, of course. And for Peter Lynch, it would be 1, but you're looking at earnings. And here I'm looking at gross profit. And most of my stocks have gross profits that is higher than 60%. So anyways, a few more things about a spreadsheet. I use enterprise value. The reason why I use enterprise value is because I want to take debt out of the equation. I do not like debt on any of my stocks, as we've seen with the banking crisis. It can be problematic today. And the type of investing that I have is, of course, investing in megatrends. So I pick my stocks on megatrends, and megatrends are great because you have a product that has adoption curves, and I try to go in early into a stock whose product is showing signs of adoption, and I try to get out of the stock when there is obvious signs that growth is slowing down. And that's why revenue here is very, very helpful, because earnings, you can manipulate them any way you want. Revenues, they don't lie. Your sales don't lie. That's the customer voting. And so they are safer. So let me get started with the spreadsheet. So first of all, I go with the cheapest. So right now, it's actually the 6 cheapest stocks right now. So my 6 cheapest stock are, first is Lovesac, which is a maker of beanbag and adjustable couches. And it's a stock that I found randomly in a screeners, and I still don't get why this stock is so cheap. I've covered it a few times on the channel. I like the stock, haven't purchased it. Then the second cheapest is StoneCo. StoneCo is consistently cheap despite the recent run that it's had. Then we have HIMS. HIMS is actually very, very cheap right now. It's been dirt cheap for a long while, followed by STEM. STEM actually posted pretty good earnings and got a little cheaper recently, followed by INDI. INDI is a semiconductor stock that specializes in providing OEMs with electric equipment, and SOFI. SOFI is actually very cheap, and if you're an investor in SOFI, you know why. It dropped quite a bit this week, so now it's much cheaper than Neobanks again, and it's at the bottom of my spreadsheet as far as price goes. Now, the boring part, the top 2 most expensive stocks that I like, stocks that I'd like to own more of, but I'm not touching, and they are NVIDIA and Shopify. And they've been consistently the most expensive stock ever since I started the spreadsheet. And Shopify, frankly, is kind of getting out of hands now with the layoffs they announced and the price that they have. NVIDIA, so expensive. I sold NVIDIA too early. Perhaps that was a mistake. I don't know. Only future will tell. But NVIDIA is just too rich for my blood right now. It's way too expensive. So let me go through each of the megatrend. So the first megatrend is what I call the energy revolution stock. It's much more than just electric car. Is the idea that, of course, we are having energy revolution, energy independence in general, whether it is solar, whether it is batteries, or whether it is electric vehicles. And my 2 favorite stocks in this space are Tesla and Enphase. I own both stocks. I own much more Tesla than Enphase. I believe in both companies. Both companies may look expensive when you look at them from traditional metrics, but in my view, both electric cars and solar panels have just begun their adoption. One of the reasons why I love Enphase and Tesla is that, I mean, if they are quasi-monopolies in their field. I mean, if you look at Tesla, it's close to 70% a share of the EV vehicle market. It's not a monopoly in the EV market, and obviously the large numbers will make it go down, but it depends what you look at. And Enphase, of course, there's a lot of competition, but as far as the micro inverters go, Enphase is a quasi-monopoly in the micro inverter market. Now, STEM is a stock that I've studied extensively. I think it's an interesting company, but it was just too hard for me to decide whether I should invest in STEM or not. They had decent earnings, pretty good earnings actually yesterday, and I may be proven wrong on STEM, or at least putting it in my too hard pile may have been a little too quick of a decision. We'll see for STEM, we'll see. But they're definitely interesting company, interesting business model. What they do is they install energy storage, battery energy storage for companies prior to the grid and after the grid, which is kind of how they define things. It's interesting company. Okay, let me move on to the next mega trend, which is healthcare, or the disruption of healthcare. In this sector, I have HIMSS and I have Teladoc. Now, I have sold out of Teladoc because I think the growth of Teladoc is somewhat disappointing, and the reason for that is that they operate in the traditional healthcare system, which means that they have to get reimbursements, insurance, etc. It doesn't allow them to grow nearly as fast as HIMSS. HIMSS operates outside of insurance, and it focuses on traditionally stigmatized issues that men or women don't have a problem paying an out-of-pocket subscription for to get fixed. And so because of that, HIMSS has a lot of the characteristics of a SaaS company. Growth rate is really, really high. It's mostly recurring revenue, and the gross margins are extremely high. And also the type of product that HIMSS sells tends to be recession resistant. So I love HIMSS. It's definitely one of my favorite stocks on this spreadsheet. Let me move on to the data warehousing and data monitoring stocks. So these are stocks that are, slowly getting a little more expensive. I got out of Snowflake, about a month and a half ago because they've literally halved their guidance for revenue growth, and revenue growth is not coming nearly as high as what they had told us, and so I've sold out. Only future will tell whether it was a mistake or not, but Snowflake is still the most expensive stock in my data warehousing stock category here. And that valuation was justified to me when they were growing at 80%. But now that they're growing at 40%, I mean, I might as well just own, HIMSS or even Datadog that still has a shot, I think, at doing 30% because these are much cheaper companies. Well, actually, Datadog and MongoDB are also getting expensive right now. Again, I'm criticizing these stocks for their price because of the theme of this video, which is the most undervalued growth stock video. I'm not criticizing for the return potential. A company can stay highly valued for decades. So it's important to keep that in mind. My favorite stock in there is Palantir, and the reason for that is their military business. I think the military business provides a nice edge to my portfolio, and even though the jury is still out as to whether Foundry will be a big deal one day or not, I think the jury is not out anymore as to who is the monopoly of AI for the government, and that is Palantir. And I think their Gotham software is outstanding, and it's a great play. It's a military software play, which is an exposure that I like. It could be part of what we call the military industrial complex. It could be the fourth player in that military industrial complex. And these companies like Lockheed Martin, very huge companies. Very huge companies, and I see no reason to think that Palantir couldn't be one of these companies at some point. So I like Palantir because of that reason. I know a lot of people out there love Palantir because of Foundry. I think Foundry has a lot of merit, but I think Foundry is a little early right now. I think they may be a little too early, and also the top-down approach to sales may be a little outdated. A lot of software today sell what they call bottom up is how a lot of software is sold today. So anyways, we'll see. Moving on to cybersecurity. As you may know, I love cybersecurity. It is recession resistant in theory, and we're going through a recession, right? And the two stocks that I like the best right now is CrowdStrike and Zscaler. Yes, Cloudflare dropped quite a bit and the valuation went down, but the valuation is still expensive for Cloudflare, so I haven't had it to Cloudflare. Zscaler is definitely the cheapest stock in there, but I like to look at both CrowdStrike and Zscaler in unison because I think both companies are very complementary. Endpoint security and zero trust are two highly needed cybersecurity software that our companies need, and so I find them very complementary, and I'm comfortable owning more of those two stocks. I own just a little bit of Cloudflare that I bought when it was cheap, and I haven't had it, and it's expensive. Cloudflare is just expensive for their VPN for website, as I like to call it. Moving on to e-commerce. So in e-commerce, Shopify got expensive, right? They announced a layoff. The market loves it. So Shopify just got even more expensive. C Limited, I like C Limited. C Limited is inexpensive, but what I don't like too much about C Limited is their gaming division. What's going to happen to Garena? Is Free Fire going to keep going, being what they call a video game hit? C Limited got in the crosshairs of the crackdown of India on video games, and so they have 1/3 of their business, which is video game, which is declining really fast, and so I think that's what has hurt the stock a lot. MercadoLibre is a stock that I find as close to pristine as possible. I mean, I can't find anything wrong with MercadoLibre. They're the leader. They're in a great market. They're highly undervalued. They're beating all of their competitors in their market. Americanas, which was one of the big competitors of MercadoLibre in Brazil. Brazil is the number one market for MELI. Americanas went out of business. They are a fintech, as well as an e-commerce, as well as a logistics player, as well as a credit company, as well as an ad company. There's really a lot to love about MercadoLibre. The only thing missing for MercadoLibre for it to look like an Amazon is the cloud. It's essentially the only thing they're missing. But they have a lot of good things going for it. I love MercadoLibre, and their earnings were really good and really outstanding. I guess the only downside or risk that you could point out for MercadoLibre is Argentina. Their second zone of operation is Argentina, and of course with inflation, it's unstable, and so there's some foreign exchange risk. But even then, they're managing it really well, and they're growing in Argentina. I think year over year, their growth in Argentina was 160%. So if you subtract hyperinflation from that, that's like 50 to 60% actual growth. So anyways, love MercadoLibre. I think it's a great stock. And in general, I really enjoy Latin America stocks. And this is a good transition to talk about STNE or StoneCo. StoneCo is the Square of Brazil with a little bit of QuickBooks sprinkled in it. They have about a 15% software division that's kind of like a QuickBooks software. And most of it is Square. Square, the payment terminal. Not the Cash App. They don't have the equivalent of a Cash App, but it's the payment terminals. The business is booming. It's doing well. They have a partnership with Big Brother Brazil, which is like the number one show in Brazil right now. And the product is really being put forward. A lot of people are very excited about StoneCo, and StoneCo is a dirt cheap company. The reason why they're dirt cheap is they had a collateral issue and the stock market sold off StoneCo. They entirely sold it off after they had a collateral issue. It's almost 2 years ago now. But interesting about StoneCo is that they're owned by both Cathie Wood and Warren Buffett, which is so crazy to think about. Anyways, the two other payments company in the payments megatrend is DLocal and Square. DLocal focuses on payments for large companies like Microsoft, and they process payments in countries like in places like Latin America, for example. It's a big market for them, but also they're trying to get into Africa, etc. And Square, of course, is the Cash App is the main play of Square in the US. The Cash App is the number one digital wallet in the US. And they're clearly taking the role of a digital bank, like an entry-level, beginning your life type of digital bank. And so both of these companies, DLocal and Square, very disruptive. I own them. but I have not added to them lately because of a short report. And Square got under attack by Hindenburg, and DLocal got under attack by Muddy Waters. And the short sellers, I mean, I'm praying StoneCo is not attacked by a short seller next, but the short seller have been after payments companies, and this creates an overhang on the stock, and I haven't had it because of that. Let me move on to the chip makers, the chip players. So we have AMD, Indie Semiconductors, on NVIDIA. NVIDIA, the leader in GPU. GPU is absolutely needed for computational computing and for everything that has to do with AI, machine learning. All of these GPT systems are powered by GPUs, which is why NVIDIA is trading so high right now. And I think NVIDIA is just too expensive, especially in the light of what we learned yesterday, that AMD is partnering with Microsoft to develop their own GPUs because Microsoft is tired of paying a fortune for NVIDIA's GPUs, and AMD has a teeny tiny GPU business, mostly for gamers, right? AMD is kind of a company that like stayed true to the gamers, but the gamers like NVIDIA better, so which is funny and interesting. Anyways, this is not too much my field, the graphics card, but I think I understand enough. And to me, AMD between out of these three, to me, is the better risk-adjusted buy. Yes, Indie Semiconductors is absolutely dirt cheap, but it is also a company that's under $1 billion. It's a very young company, and this is a cutthroat industry. There's a lot of risk, in a way. Indie focuses on all of the tiny semiconductors that are sold in cars, but they specifically focus on radar technology and on ADAS, like a drive assist, entertainment systems, etc. for cars, and they have major competitor in that business. Nonetheless, the growth is extremely impressive for Indie, which makes this stock dirt cheap. But AMD is my favorite of the chip makers right now. Still my favorite, and this is a space that I want to have exposure to, obviously, because it is a major mega trend. This is the oil of computing, is the chips, right? Anyways, let me talk about AdTech really briefly. The Trade Desk, I own. It's very expensive. I don't know why I own it sometimes. So an old stock that I've had for a long time, it's very expensive, and that's all I have to say about the Trade Desk. They're a leader in what they do, but they're just an expensive company. And Pubmatic I like a lot too. Pubmatic is actually a much cheaper stock. They focus on the sell side. They help publishers sell ad space. Great valuation for Pubmatic, but then Pubmatic, you're getting into a different type of risk, which is, of course, it's a tiny company. You can have short sellers. You can have a bunch of issues with a company that's only $600 million in enterprise value. To note is that I haven't focused on ad tech as much on the channel because right now ad revenue is down all over the place and these stocks are not very popular right now, but I will cover them shortly. Let me focus on lifestyle companies. So, as you know, part of the lifestyle megatrends, my thesis is that, yes, a lot of the old brands that mean something to our parents or grandparents, depending on one's age, like all of these brands that grew up pre-internet, pre-television, if that makes any sense. Pre-internet, during the era of television. Like the way you would create a brand is that you would have the evening news and everybody would watch the evening news, and then you would have the consumer brand being advertised, and that's how all of these brands that are famous. I don't know, like an example like Mr. Clean. This is an example of a brand that was developed in an era where really marketing was going through the tube, essentially through the television. And this has changed tremendously today. And today a lot of the marketing goes online, and because of that, there's a lot of new brands that emerge. And with new brands come new companies that can have outstanding growth. So the first stock in that segment is Celsius. Celsius Holdings is really could be the monster beverage of the next 10 years. Who knows? Their product is really resonating with the millennial consumer, with the Gen Z consumer. They have this sports drink positioning, but that has also a lot of caffeine in it, so it keeps your customers coming back. It's the whole concept of an energy drink. I mean, this is no different from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has caffeine because people, once you have caffeine, you want more. You want to come back for caffeine, and it's got sugar too, etc. So, anyways, that's a brand. People like that type of product, and if you're in the US, Celsius Holdings is everywhere, and it's like literally in every single store. One of the big risks for Celsius is Pepsi. They have a partnership with Pepsi, and I am afraid sometimes in my thesis that Pepsi acquires Celsius, and then it's not really my style of investing. I don't invest in a stock for it to get acquired. I invested for you to own it a long time. Lovesac, discussed it in the beginning of the video. They focus on bean bags. This is what they got started, but beyond bean bags, now they do a bunch of, it's kind of a designer's dream couch. It's kind of this reconfigurable couch that they have. Interesting product, but they have very productive showrooms, and it's hard to understand why this stock is trading this cheap, especially given their expected growth, and of course that likely has to do with the housing market. The housing market is way down, and so the market is like, well, housing is down, nobody's ever going to buy furniture again. We're done with furniture. Let's dump the stock, and it's noteworthy that this stock is the cheapest stock in my entire spreadsheet. And the last one is Figs. So Figs is really a modern take on Lululemon. If you know Lululemon, and if you know anything about their business model, is they took this obscure product, or this highly specialized product of the yoga pant, and they made it mainstream, and it's like a mainstream adopted product now. Well, Figs is trying to do the same thing with scrubs. Scrubs is, this wide, baggy fit, apparel that doctors, nurses have to wear at the hospital, and they're taking that apparel which is not very attractive, and they're making it look good, making it look attractive, and a lot of Gen Z, a lot of millennial people in the medical field love it, and they're obviously trying to go after the entire market, right? All of the consumers. And so part of this thesis of this lifestyle brand is our scrubs going to be a common type of wear that people just wear. And surely these are trends that we see in many places, right? I bet you most people who wear Lululemon's yoga pants have never done yoga, right? If you wear jeans, that doesn't mean you work in construction, right? And so why wouldn't that work for scrubs as well, is a question that I ask. And if it does, of course, this company could be like a major multi-bagger, which is why I like Figs very much. It's a lifestyle brand. It's a bet, and at this valuation, the downside I view as limited. Let me talk about the neobanks now. So what is a neobank? Well, it's a bank that works with an app and that has no branches and no cash, because you don't need any of that in the modern day. Gen Z, millennials, cash don't mean much to them, and that's why these companies do well. For the longest time, Nubank and SoFi were trading at just about the same valuation, and SoFi, and don't ask me why. I really don't know why they went down. Likely has to do with the banking crisis. They're caught in this banking sell-off. But their numbers are stellar. I mean, the numbers were outstanding. I was expecting a jump in the stock price by 20 to 30%. In fact, that's always what it had done in the past. And this time the stock just sold off. And it's hard to understand, because they're firing on all cylinders except a side business that they have, Galileo, which is not really core to the investing thesis in SoFi. Aside from that, they're firing on all cylinders. The market has anomalies. SoFi is the cheaper stock. At this price, I am interested in adding to SoFi. The final category is the platform. The platform business model, I think, is an extremely powerful business model these days. You can have companies capture major revenue share by acting as platforms. And the only one that I own in there is actually Airbnb. I think Airbnb is a underrated stock. Very few people follow it. The few videos I've made on Airbnb, nobody's watched them because I seem to be the only one who likes this stock. But I like this stock. I mean, they have no overhead whatsoever. right? I mean, it's really amazing, and they make gross margins outstanding. The growth is outstanding. They're more powerful than just about any hotel company. In fact, they control more. I was looking at the statistics. They control more nightly housing than all of the hotels in the United States combined together. But they have none of the assets, none of the maintenance, none of the rent to pay. I mean, it's amazing. They are a toll road on the sharing of shelter, essentially. And I think this company could become absolutely major, especially with the 2024 Paris Olympics. Like they're like the main sponsor of the event for housing. Anyways, I believe in Airbnb, and there's still pent-up demand. And who knows how long we're going to have pent-up demand from 2020. We still have major pent-up demand from 2020. Like if you're flying, if you've checked the price of plane tickets, there's plenty of pent-up demand right now for travel. So anyways, and then you have Etsy and Fiverr. Not going to talk much about Etsy and Fiverr here, but these are the same similar platform. Etsy is for crafts. They're kind of a new eBay, as I like to call them. eBay is kind of old now, but where cool people sell vintage now is on Etsy, and it's very popular among Gen Z and millennials. And Fiverr right now, the stock is cheap because they're getting under attack by the ChatGPT narrative. I have covered Fiverr on the channel. I have to cover it again, but Fiverr is a bet on the future of work and the future on the nature of work. So this was it for this spreadsheet. That was a lot of stocks. I hope you liked it. This is not investment advice, of course. This is just literally me commenting on valuation. This is just entertainment. I appreciate your likes. I appreciate your subscribe. I appreciate your support, your comments. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.